we will hear once again from the President of the United States after he completes his national security meeting. It is not only important, it is his obligation. He is the commander-in-chief of our nation.
Like him, playing for a possible £1 million, phone this number now, 09 068 444444. Coming up next is The Bill tonight. We're back Saturday night again at 8.
Panic grips the streets. Now Bush vows revenge.
From ITN, the ITV News with Trevor McDonald.
Good evening. Important symbols of American power have been hit today by a series of devastating terrorist attacks. 2 planes attacked the World Trade Center in New York, sending the Twin Towers crashing to the ground in clouds of smoke and dust and throwing lower Manhattan into chaos. Another aircraft breached the security at the headquarters of America's military might and slammed into the Pentagon. A 4th crashed in Pittsburgh. For a time today, the White House was evacuated. Wall Street was shut down and work in the American government effectively came to a halt. The attacks were coordinated and deadly. The planes belonging to American Airlines and United Airlines were all passenger planes. We must assume the passengers and the crew were all killed. Even now, several hours after the attacks, no one can say with certainty how many other people died. That number may run into many thousands. Robert Moore reports now on a day of death and massive destruction.
This was in every sense an act of war on America, bringing disaster and tragedy to 2 of its greatest cities. Without even beginning to know the death toll, it constitutes the most devastating series of terrorist attacks in history. And it left the rescue services virtually powerless. This was the morning Manhattan skyline. Images that will live alongside Pearl Harbor as symbolizing a nation attacked without warning. It began when a hijacked plane flew straight into one of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. 18 minutes later, captured on video, a second plane was steered into the other tower. Seen in slow motion, it was obvious from this. It was no aviation accident. From a different angle, the attack was live across the US networks. An amateur cameraman across the Hudson River also filmed the horrifying impact. The plane can be seen flying in from the left of the towers. Oh, 50,000 people were in these 2 buildings. And in harrowing images, people could be seen hanging out of the windows of the skyscrapers, waving for help and pleading for rescue. Shortly afterwards, in scenes that will scar this nation for a generation, one of the giant towers collapsed onto its own foundations. A little later, the second Twin Tower imploded. How many lives lost in this act of hatred, no one dares to guess at this stage. One of the great symbols of America has been demolished. And the human toll of those caught in these vast offices is barely imaginable. Covered in dust from the debris, people emerged onto the streets of Lower Manhattan in shock. Paramedics and police, utterly overwhelmed, helped the injured as best they could. Others simply tried to run to safety. For others, it was deep shock, mixed with a terrible, single, all-consuming question.
There's people jumping out of windows. I've seen at least 14 people jumping out of windows. It's horrific. I can't believe this is happening.
We heard a big bang, and then we saw smoke coming out, and everybody started running out, and we saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere, and people are jumping out the windows. Over there, they're jumping out the windows, I guess because they're trying to save themselves. I don't know. And I don't know, everybody just doesn't know where to go. They won't let, everything is blocked off. You can't even, they're telling us to get out, but there's nowhere to go. And then I heard that another plane hit, and if you go over by there, you can see the people jumping out the window. They're jumping out the window right now. Oh my God.
Everything just went black. Everything came down, glass started popping. People got hurt, stuff went on top of them. And it was a big explosion. Everything got dark, real dark, like snow.
After the carnage in New York, a third hijacked plane was crashed into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And again, the destruction was immense. America was thrown into further confusion. All aircraft across the country were grounded, and federal buildings, including the White House, evacuated. And the president, who was in Florida, faced one of the greatest crises in post-war America.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward, and freedom will be defended. I want to reassure the American people that the full resources of the federal government are working to assist local authorities to save lives and to help the victims of these attacks. Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts. I've been in regular contact with the Vice President, Secretary of Defense, the National Security Team, and my cabinet. We have taken all appropriate security precautions to protect the American people.
Amid fears of further suicide attacks by terrorists using hijacked planes, fighter jets are circling over the Capitol to intercept them. The president is confronting not just a human disaster, but a colossal failure of America's national security system itself. This was a failure of intelligence on a huge scale. The entire US government is tonight on alert for further attacks, while it hunts for those responsible. Robert Moore, ITN.
Let's go now to our Washington correspondent, James Mates. James, late in the afternoon in Washington, have there been any major developments in the nation's capital?
Well, what we are waiting for now, Trevor, is the return of the president to Washington. That will be an important symbolic event on a day like this. He has spent the day at strategic command centers, first in Louisiana and then in Nebraska, coordinating
And I saw the paper and read it, and it was from the 106th floor of the World Trade Center, and I just knew that it was, you know, you couldn't imagine it. It was like being in downtown Beirut in America.
Good grief. And on the scene is Rose Arce. Rose is a CNN producer in New York, a veteran CNN producer and a very capable CNN producer. Where were you when this happened this morning, Rose? I can't hear Rose. Okay. I'm sorry, Rose. Okay. We'll have to check back with you, Rose. We're having difficulty. Let's go to Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. Jamie, first, we've heard the briefings earlier. What kind of shape is that building in?
Pretty bad shape, Larry. It's nearly 12 hours after this plane slammed into the side of the Pentagon. The building is still burning. The firefighters say they have the blaze contained in an area, but it's still not under control. In fact, if you look right behind my head, you can see some flames licking out of the roof there. That's part of the firefighting technique of trying to cut the roof open and let the fire burn through in order to put this out. Nevertheless, the Pentagon is vowing, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld and President Bush both saying that the building will open for business as usual tomorrow. That may be possible if they just open the other side of the building where, of course, the Secretary's office is, the Pentagon briefing room, the National Military Command Center, all on the other side of the building. You know, in some ways, there was a little bit of luck in today's incident in that this part of the building was under renovation. That meant that some of the new space that had just been renovated was not yet occupied, and it also had improved fire retardant capabilities. And on the old side, over basically in this direction, that part of the building, people had just moved out to get ready for the next phase of renovation. So there weren't nearly as many people as might have been in the building at that time of day. Nevertheless, Pentagon officials expect the death toll to be high, but they are not saying publicly what they think that death toll will be. Larry?
And Jamie, have you been able at all to see the aircraft?
Well, you know, earlier today I got right up next to the building and I took a look at some of the pieces that were outside. There were only very small pieces of that American Airlines jetliner, a cockpit that was a window that was all smashed, part of the fuselage that was bent and twisted, but most of the parts of the plane are still inside the building, according to people who've been in and seen it.
Thank you, Jamie. Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. We have a panel of senators joining us, and before we check with them, here is just a moment of what the statement made tonight by President George Bush at the White House. Watch.
These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve.
We'll be hearing in a while from a terrorist expert, an aviation expert. We'll also be hearing from the former Secretary of Defense, William Cohen, and we'll be checking with others. But right now,
nobody can threaten this country. Nobody can threaten this country.